Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Justin Wolf from Wolf Customs. Sitting before you today, I've got a pair of GI trigger finger mittens and a waterproofing compound. The reason for this is my beloved dog, Maya, decided to take my old mittens and chew this entire index off of one of them. So I've been forced to get a new pair. Well, what good is a shell or an outer layer if it's not waterproof? So what I've got here is something that I use quite often, and it's basically just a mixture of 1 pound of beeswax and 32 ounces of boiled linseed oil. Take those two together, put them together, melt them down, stir them up real good, and basically you're left with a nice waterproofing compound. When it dries, it's kind of like a candle. I had a past video where it was actually a mixture of beeswax, boiled linseed oil, and turpentine. It worked great. Problem that I found with it is the turpentine gave it a horrible smell, and that smell lingered for quite some time. It eventually goes away, but it does linger for a good amount of time. So I've played with it a little bit, and what I've been using lately, like I said, is 1 pound beeswax, 32 ounces of boiled linseed oil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and melt this down real quick, and we are going to coat these real well with this. And then we're going to take these outside and see how they hold up. So, stay with me. Now I should add that depending on where you're doing this, you're going to try to do this just a little bit differently. If you do this outside, you really need to be doing this over hot coals instead of a flame. You know, if you do this over a flame, this mixture does have a flash point and it will catch on fire. So you definitely need to be careful with that. If you're doing it inside, don't set your stove on high. Just set it on medium. Be slow. Let it melt down. Take the heat off. But just be careful. Okay, now that we've got this melted down, or mostly melted down anyway, I am going to start brushing this on. Now I'm going to be quite generous with it. You know, I'm not going to try to conserve and everything else. That 1 pound of beeswax and boiled linseed oil goes a long ways, so on small projects that is. I don't suggest you try to use this for a tarp or anything like that, otherwise you're going to be spending a lot of money. But make sure that you get a good amount where the seams are, and that's where you're going to have to go back and treat it the most. I mean, this isn't a permanent solution here. I mean, you will have to go and treat this thing, you know, throughout the course of its life. Now, is there better concoctions out there? I'm sure there probably is. And I am definitely open to listening to everybody's thoughts on that, because, quite frankly, I always love learning a better method. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do the other glove now, and then we'll get back with you and we'll move forward. Okay, so right now you're sitting here and you're looking at your glove and everything and you're going, oh Lord, what have I done? It looks horrible. Well, this is not what it's going to look like when it's finished, okay? This is actually a finished glove here, okay? So you can see that all the clumpy wax and everything else, you know, goes away. You're going to be left with this. And is it going to be as soft and pretty and everything else? No, it's not. But you have to ask yourself, what is it that you're doing with these gloves, okay? Are you going outdoors, you know, chopping wood, spending time by a fire, or are you walking down a runway modeling these things? Well, we all know the answer. You're not trying to win a beauty contest. You're trying to keep your hands warm and you're trying to keep your hands dry. So the next step is to get some sort of cloth, paper towel or something like that, and a heat gun or a hair dryer. Okay, my heat gun, I bought at Harbor Freight real cheap. It crapped out on me, so I am using a hair dryer right now. And all we're going to do is we're going to start heating all this up, and you're going to see pools, okay? Places where it's pooling up. When it starts pooling up, I'm going to take my cloth and I'm going to smear it around and everything else, okay? Now, keep in mind, you're going to be messing with very hot wax at this point, so be careful not to burn yourself. The other thing is this, when you do this, this is actually going to push all this treatment into those seams, into the fibers and everything else, and really seal it up nice and well. Alright, and there you have it. Your gloves are nice and treated now. Let them cool for a little bit, and it's what you're going to be looking for is buildup, you know, in the seams, or if you got a big chunky area of wax, kind of like this spot right here. Those are the things you're going to look for. And is what you're going to do is you're going to go back, you're going to heat up that area, you know, smear it around. Really take your time with this. This is not a fast process, okay? Expect to spend at least 30 minutes to an hour doing this. Keep in mind that these are your hands that you're trying to keep dry and warm. So the more time you spend on these gloves, you know, ultimately the better it is for you. Now if you inspect this glove and you see that there are some spots like on this thumb right here, there are some light and dark places. Maya, knock it off. There are some light and dark places right here. Well, now you have a rag that's saturated in beeswax and everything else. So take your hair dryer, warm this back up, warm your glove back up, and really smear it in. Really treat it good. So I'm going to treat these just a little bit more, let them cool down, then we're going to go outside and we're going to test them out. Alright, now when it comes to playing in snow and everything else, you're going to be able to play around in the snow and everything until you're blue in the face, and it's never going to penetrate these gloves. I know this because, you know, if you look back to last year, I actually made a snow quinzhee, and I was using my gloves just like this at that time to make that shelter, and not once did the water or the snow ever penetrate into my gloves. And it was the same solution that I used then as it is that I'm using now. But what's it going to be like whenever it's time for a rain? Is it going to stand up? Well, let's take a look. As you can see, it's just rolling off. You can have a torrential downpour on these gloves, and it's not going to penetrate. I promise you. Like I said, I know because I've been there. Alright, now I know some of you guys are out there and you're looking at these gloves and you've probably never even seen them before or ever even heard of them. And you might be asking yourself, how warm are those gloves really? I mean, they look pretty thin, right? Well, I'm here to tell you, these gloves are probably one of the best gloves I've ever used. I mean, are there warmer ones? You bet there are. But these work really, really well. And something that a lot of people don't know is these gloves actually have a liner. That is a wool mitten. Now, not all of these wool mittens are created equal. Some of them are thinner, some of them are thicker. So really hold out until you find a nice, really good, thick pair. But, you know, these things here, okay, for example, when I go deer hunting or something, when I'm sitting static, okay, that's when I get cold. When I'm up moving around and everything else, it's, you know, it's not a big deal. But when it comes to just sitting static, you know, it really doesn't matter how many layers of clothing and everything else you got on. Eventually, that cold kind of seeps in. So, these gloves, my hands are one of the few things that never get cold because I always have these on. Then, if I'm getting ready to take a shot, I simply slip the shell off, use that, call it a day. So I'm here to tell you, these gloves are absolutely fantastic. So if you've never tried these gloves, or you've been on the fence about trying these gloves, you know, don't be. I mean, they're relatively cheap nowadays. I mean, you can pick up a pair of these for under 10 bucks, or you can get the real big, beefy Arctic Pro ones that have the fuzz on the back side and everything else, and I think you can pick those up for around 20 bucks nowadays. So they are really fantastic gloves. So anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.